like I said, I'm probably not going to obviously be doing this panel till 4:30 because I know for a fact that there's no sound equipment over where my concert is at 4:30. So I will probably, if I was just taking a guess, we'll probably do this for about 20 to 30 minutes probably, which impromptu, that's not bad. And I don't know whose these are. They were left in here.
So you're doing this in the concert too, or is it just one thing you're kind of fusing together?
Huh?
So I know you got two events scheduled today, right? You got this one and you have something later on.
Yeah, I have
Just
this.
one thing?
Yeah, I have this event, and then in Indianapolis A, I have a concert from 4:30 to 6. It was a coincidental mix-up. They put things really close together, and so there was no way for them to, and they had to make cuts. Originally, this panel was going to get cut, and I was like, okay, I understand, it's fine. And then about a week or two ago, Huscom said, well, it turns out we have the room, so we're sticking you in there. So I was like, well, I don't have anything then. So I do have a little bit though. So
Let's go. I'll probably come grab you later then. That's fine.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, so I'll just go ahead and get started. We'll kind of have this impromptu. It'll kind of be fun. So for those of you who don't know me, a couple of you, my name is Citrine Husky, and I've been in the fandom for about 3 years. I am an blind entertainer, I think the only one in the fandom, which is probably the only reason I've gained some attention. But I just like to get on stage, make a fool of myself, help the charity, do whatever I can to make the fandom better. And I decided last year that I would get up on stage right here at IFC and I would do a little bit of improv. And so when I got up there, like I said, I was tipsy and I don't remember half of what I said, but people laughed, and so I decided to do this year. So I'm definitely going to use some of the stuff from that. So I'm actually really glad that they didn't give me a stage in this room. Like, I'm glad for that, because I will tell you, being blind stairs is a bitch. It really is. It's like my mortal enemy, because I just do not deal with those. Anytime I see them, I will run into them. I will almost fall over them. It's almost like people are with Pokemon Go running into the pillows, and you just see them, and I'm like, oh. The one good thing about Pokemon Go that I will say is that for Pokemon Go, for those of you who play it, I really don't know much about it, but I do know that it makes people on the same level as me, because I don't feel so guilty anymore about, almost accidentally running into traffic, or almost, running into a bush or a building or anything, because I see people do that on a daily basis now. And so it actually just makes me very happy to see something like that. But anyway, a lot of people, I actually talked about this yesterday, and this was at my blindside panel, where I talk about blindness and education. And I always thought of this as a cane, which is what it is. But I never really understood what cane as a, acronym stood for until last year at IFC, and I wish to God I was making this up. Because people think, oh, you just make stories up for comedy. No, I don't. I wouldn't put somebody's expense at comedy, except for my own. But this is now known as a cock and nut exterminator. Because what happened is, one fateful night after I went to the bar and had a little too much to drink, I was tapping around very heavily, and it's hitting the wall, bam! And all of a sudden, I hit something that's not quite wall. For whatever reason, somebody thought it was a good idea, because there was a sign apparently on the wall that said, lay down here. And they're texting on their phone or playing their DS, heck if I know. And I hit them. And I'm thinking, just okay, maybe they'll move. They're not moving. And so I'm kind of looking down, I can't see them, but I'm kind of looking down, trying to get a grip on what where I've hit. And then I see this stick figure start to curl into a ball and moan. And I realize that he will never have kids, because this has hit him. And I didn't know how to apologize to the guy. I mean, how do you say, oh, sorry, I didn't see your nuts there? How are you supposed to do that? So it was actually one of those moments. He's actually a good friend of mine now, but to this day, he will not let me live it down. He actually tells everybody that I tried to maim his nuts, which, but this cane has had more than one instance in the fandom. Last year, it helped me meet the Ranting Griffin. And he's, you know, you would think he's an asshole, and I did too, but he's actually a really sweet guy, just his persona. But I got to meet him, and he asked me if he could hold my cane. I said, yeah, you know, I don't care. So he starts to hold my cane, and later, and then he goes, okay, you can have it back. That's all I needed, and I didn't understand why. And later, I went onto his Twitter, and I found out that the only reason that he wanted to hold my cane was because he wanted to say that he was the only one who touched a guy's long stick. That's what he wanted to say, and he actually tweeted that. And it was actually very amusing because 2 is actually a little more explicit than that usually, but it was actually very entertaining, and we've been friends ever since. And I'm bound and determined to get him one of these for Christmas just so he can have it. And I don't know what it is about it because I do have one more instance with this thing. So Alkali likes to do stuff for charity. And a good friend of mine, he likes to get drunk and make jokes. And so he decided, for reality, people put a big handful of change, just pennies, in the hat of his. And somebody went up on stage, and they put the hat on his head. Now, he was too drunk to care. He was having fun with it, and he said the line, I'm not Jewish, I just really like money. So after that, for some reason, my mate over here decided to turn the cane and fold it into a star and handed it to him, and in his drunken stupor he holds it up. It's the Jewish star! And it was, I don't think it's on film, sadly, but so this cane has been around in the fandom, and I like to think that my personality got me some friends, but I like to think that this cane sort of helped push that little extra mile. For those of you who don't know, I actually am also a musician. If you come to my panel later, you'll find that out. Believe it or not, I'm actually a million times better at that than I am at this. Because this is something new, I've been a musician for years. But I found some interesting things about being a musician. I figured out that instruments are a lot like sex. Because you can take the piano, the guitar, the harmonica. These are the 3 main instruments that I play. And I also play accordion a little bit, but not that much. But anyway, so as far as the guitar, I learned that you have to move your hands up and down and you have to strum it just right. Don't get ahead of me, huh? As far as the piano, I learned that you have to learn to stroke the keys just right. You have to learn to do things like that, you know? And with the harmonica, that's pretty much a blowjob instrument. You're having to just use your mouth and your lips. It's really kind of a screwed up instrument. And the accordion, well, you just have to, you know, you're playing it, but you're going in and out. So I figured out that instruments are a lot like sex because if you treat them right and if you do it just right, you'll get satisfying results out of them. So, you know, I don't really talk about this much, but my mate is albino, and we've been dating for about 2 years. I didn't really know how far to take it because as an albino, there are a lot of jokes that you can make. You know, I think one of the reasons that I told her we dated when I was joking one time, I said, it's because she was pretty much, I can't see in the dark, and she can't. It's because she glows in the dark, that's it. She's just an albino. She's almost like solar powered, and I just love that. It's very amusing, it's very sweet. But we actually met at the blind school about a few years back, And when we met at the blind school, people always ask, well, how did you meet? It's so sweet that you're together, but how did you meet? And I think to myself, well, most people say, oh, we were standing. They try and make this stupid, ridiculous, amazing story. Oh, we met on the beach, and the sun was beautiful, and the eagles came, and it was just all beautiful and crap. Well, no, that doesn't work because we can't see worth shit. So that doesn't work. So how you can't do, I saw her standing there. No, that doesn't work. Well, I smelled her standing, you get hit for that. Well, I heard her standing there, she had beans earlier that day, but you can't do that either. So usually we just say, nah, we just bumped into each other because blind people are always running into things. So that's usually how we just go about it. So, for those of you who don't know, I am an open-minded Christian, which just means that I believe in God, I have my own convictions, but I actually am a supporter of the LGBT community, things like that. But anyway, the reason I'm talking about that is because the stories that I had when I first started going to church was very interesting. The first time that I went to church, I was about 7 or 8 years old. And when they say, God's talking to you, He's talking to you, I kind of knew it that day. Everything pointed in visual terms. Because it started out with, okay, good morning, they start singing, and they sing, blinded by the light, He leadeth me. They start singing songs like that, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And then they get to the sermon, and they start talking about, the blind man that was healed by Jesus, and I'm like, I'm listening now. I kind of, and so they get done with the story, and I was tempted to be like, hey God, I'm here. Can you see me? I mean, I can't see you, but can you see me? I'm here. And it was just one of those times where I was like, okay, But the funniest part of that story is that when I was on my way home from church, my nephew at the time was about 5 years old. And in Sunday school that morning, they had taught about Adam and Eve and how Cain killed his brother as soon as he was able, but that's neither here nor there, that's not the joke. He said, so, can brothers and sisters get married? And I just nearly shit. I'm like, where are you from? And so I looked at him as weird as a blind guy can, and I said, no. And he said, well, then explain Adam and Eve. How did they have kids? So, being the devious, twisted person I was at only 7 years old, my wheels started turning in my head, and it finally hit me. People can't find the Garden of Eden. They don't know where it is. And I'm like, somewhere in Kentucky, there's the modern-day Garden of Eden. Now, I have to watch where I tell that joke, because I actually told that joke in Kentucky once. And the weird thing was that half the crowd laughed and were doubled over and took a shot. The other half were reaching for their gun permits and their pistols. So, yeah, never saw that coming. But, yes, being comedic is very natural to me, but not when I'm on stage. I'm not used to getting up on stage and doing what Alkali and Dragor and all of them do. But then again, it could happen, because I'm just naturally, easily amused, and I find the filthy and the stupid puns that tend to get people's attention. However, I have actually watched the first ever Uncle Kage and the first ever Two Griffin and first ever Alkali show, and honestly, I can say I don't feel that bad. In order to be any good, and I hate that, a lot of people in this fandom want to get famous really fast. They want to be poppy for, I hate that phrase. But they want to be cool. They want to be known by everybody. If I've learned one thing, it's that if you want to be worth a damn at something, if you're good at something, that means that at one point you were shit at it. You weren't any good. You can't just start at the top. It doesn't work like that. I wish it did, but then again, there'd be so many egos, it's not even funny. Yes, of course this is Crystal Pepsi. Of course, doesn't it look like it? I won't go into what that is. Let me actually take a look at something here, because believe it or not, I actually didn't get much sleep last night, so my mind tends to jumble, so let's just pretend that the blind guy is going to look at his computer. Well, you know what, you are not gonna work for me, are you? I don't know which I'd rather have, though. Honestly, people say, oh, it's so cool, you can use blind technology. Yeah, it sucks ass and it's creepy as hell. You know how creepy it is when at 6 in the morning your phone goes off? You have a new message. Do you know how, I've went through 6 phones in my life because of that. It will be right by my head and I chuck that sucker. There are literal dents in my wall and I wish I was kidding. So, I am the type of person where I keep certain views to myself. If I've learned one thing, in general, you just don't talk about politics. You don't. What I have learned, though, is that you can if you're equal on both sides. I know that, people are all about Trump and stuff like that. I've heard, I watch, well, I don't watch, but I do hear, what's being said, what's going on. And to me, I just kind of think, Two thinks of Trump as an anthropomorphic asshole because there's always shit coming out of his mouth. But me, I honestly think of him sometimes as a volleyball. Because if he wasn't running for president, then I feel like he would be tossed from country to country like hot potato. We don't want you, nope, we don't want you, and he'd be going, and then finally he lands in the ocean, and then that's when a volcano erupts, and it pops up, it's like, nope, you're not staying here. Now, as for Hillary, it's kind of interesting, because even though, Trump, they can blow a lot more crap up on Trump if they really want to, because that's what people do, they feed off of drama and shit. I don't know if this fandom even knows about that. But I've noticed that the vital thing is that, things get deleted, things get lost. Well, that kind of is important if you're going to be president. I mean, here's that letter from, what happened to that letter from Homeland Security, Miss Clinton? Oh, Homeland Security, I thought that was just a whole lot of shit. I deleted it, So I just, people say, well, if Clinton gets in the White House, things are going to get hairy. And I'm like, yeah, things get hairy on my face too. You just get a razor. It's not that hard. But honestly, I'm not really a big political person. You can believe how you want. You can follow who you want. And I'm the same way with religion. I'm really laid back. But I do have my own opinions on all of them. Just because I don't think, people say, well, they're better. They're human just like us. Guess what? There's never been a perfect president, all right? There's never been. And I don't think there will be, because as long as they're human, they're not perfect. But it's very amusing to hear people bitch about things that really aren't gonna matter. And it amuses me. I just love it. So, I have, like I said, this is my first time doing it. When I did it at MCFC, and the reason I say this is my first time is because there's actually people here. I was telling them this story before the panel, but when I was at MCFC, they set me up in a little room, and it was just a last minute thing. And they were like, oh yeah, you could do it. They set me up. Again, now I have nothing against board of directors. That's fine. I understand you have to put things in certain places. I get it. But they put me up against Charity Who's Line. They put me up against Uncle Kage's Story Hour. Why they put those two together anyway, I don't understand. And then they put that right up next to the dance comp. I don't think people knew where to go. That was probably the most crazy thing for me, because when I would go in the lobby, there was constantly an X just going, because the dance comp was over here, and Uncle Kage's over here, and Whose Line is over here, and then there's, people getting dinner over here. So you've got this, and the hotel people are like, get out of the lobby, get out of the lobby. No one's gonna get out of the lobby. You put everything in the lobby, figure it out. But that was probably the most interesting thing for me because I got up there to do a panel that we do, which is called The Blind Side with my mate. It is where we just get up on stage and we pretty much tell people what it's like to be blind. We'd be comedic, we'd be fun about it, you know. And so what we decided to do is they decided to put that right after, you know, my panel, Citrine is Mr. Magoo, right after The Blind Side. And that was fine. Everybody left. And I thought they were still in there. So I just started doing my show and I'm thinking, damn, I've went through 45 minutes of stuff and not even a choke. I don't even hear anybody, you know, tapping on their phones or doing nothing. And after I got done with it, I realized the ultimate downfall of a blind person, which is you can do a show for an empty room and think that you sucked when there's nobody there. People, I feel like they always feel bad about, you know, laughing at blind people. I've actually had people almost avoid hanging out with me at points, and they're friends with me now, but there's always going to be some that will avoid hanging out with us because they feel like it's a sin to laugh at somebody because they have a disability, or even laugh at a blind joke. I mean, you know, they don't stop and think. At MCFC, at the dance competition last year, and this is on YouTube, and I will watch this multiple times. First of all, I almost hit the camera guy. I didn't know he was trying to get really close to me, and I do my spin around, and I realized I missed him by like that much.
Oh, wow.
And all of a sudden, I seen him just go right out of my vision, but he went way back, I guess. But anyway, when I got done with my dance, I stood there, and everybody's like, yay, yay, and moved around and didn't bump into anything, yay. And the guy's like, so for you and Snowflake with well, you know, for those of you who have for those of you who can't, you know, it was great. And I'm like, dude, you can say blind, it's not a cuss word, it's okay. It's all right. I hate it when people avoid that. It is amusing, but it gets annoying because you have two kinds of people. I'll be honest with you, other than some of my close family and friends outside of the fandom is the only place where I feel like you can actually have people that are okay with they're okay with the blind. They don't do one of the two stereotypes that I hate so much. There's the two stereotypes. There's either the, I'm going to avoid you like the plague because you're going to infect me with that, or there is the, you can't move an inch because you're blind. You can't even breathe on your own. I'm going to help you do everything. And then you feel bad, but you want to tell them to fuck off. Because when people, I don't think people realize that when you have a disability, well, I even hate that phrase disability, but, you know, government has to use it so but I like to think of it as an impairment, because an impairment doesn't mean that you can't get over it. A disability, pretty much a lot of people, I've gotten the phrase, oh, I'm so sorry, and I'm like, yeah, me too, because you don't understand. I don't think people stop to think that, oh yeah, you've always seen this way. You know, so it's very amusing and it's very entertaining. But like I was saying earlier, actually get another drink. This is actually good stuff. Still not telling you what it is. It's Coke, of course. So when I was first in the fandom, how I met Alkali was actually a very, very interesting story, because I found out that Alkali actually got a little bit in trouble with Xander later, but it was sweet and it was amusing, and he's cleared me to tell the story, so it's fine. But when I first met Alkali, it was at a charity event at IFC 2014, and he had no idea who I was. All he knew was I was blind, and he says in front of everybody, "Come up here, Mr. Magoo," and everybody freaked out. And so I came up on stage, everybody was, you know, then I realized that he was like a skyscraper, so that was great. And I find out the stage was about this tall. I'm not tall compared to him, I can't just jump that. So I had to get up on stage, and I got up on stage, so I go up one knee and I'm like this, I'm up on the stage, and I realized that I'm about his center of gravity, we'll say. And he's about a foot away. Now, Xander is in the back of the room. All he sees is Alkali do this and go, I got this. That's all he sees. And he's just gone. I don't know him at the time. I don't know Xander at the time. And he just walks out the room. I found out later, Alkali ended up sleeping on the couch. Not because Xander thought that he did anything, he thought that it was, I guess like he thought maybe it was just something that he didn't know about, so it just kind of concerned him. And so, but I found that very interesting. So the next morning, I'm sitting there in the hotel and I'm eating breakfast, just, and I can't see anybody around me, obviously. And so I'm just eating my breakfast, having a good time. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, you ruined my night! And of course, after my food landed somewhere over there, I said, what? And he said, I slept alone. And I said, I'm waiting for marriage, so me too. And he said, if I knew that you were an asshole, I would swat you down. But you know what? I want to buy you a drink instead. And so we became friends. That's generally how we became friends, over me pissing Xander off unintentionally. I find this fandom, people just meet in very weird ways such as that. And I think that that's awesome, because there are things in this fandom that you're never going to hear anywhere else. There aren't. I mean, where else are you going to hear somebody say a phrase like, oh, I lost my tail, I need to find my tail. Where are you going to hear that? If you go outside of this hotel and you say that somewhere in downtown, people are going to call the mental hospital right away, and they're going to take you away. But in here, we're just like, oh, well, do you leave it in condoms? Let's go check. And it's just normal conversation. And I think that's why I love the fandom so much. Because in the fandom, I don't think that there's anything within reason, I guess, that is unheard of. In this fandom, people usually 99% of the time have restraint, but they're free-spirited enough to not care. And I think if the real world, people, just in general did that, I think the world would be chaotic, but we make it work. I think that's pretty awesome. And now we're going to pretend like I'm looking at my phone. 7 after 4, all right. I also, the way I met Kage was also creepy too. And I've met a lot of people in this fandom, but the reason that I bring up some of the bigger people is simply for the fact because I see them all the time and they never let me live it down. Because it was also IFC 2014. And I was sort of awestruck a little bit. I don't know why. It's like, well, I've seen them on YouTube. Oh crap. I don't know why that awestruck me, but it did. And so she went over to Uncle Kage because I wouldn't. And she said, what kind of wine would you recommend I try? I'm new to wine. And he goes, oh, just tilt your head back. And he gives her some wine. Well, then I'm pissed. I'm like, damn. So then he sees her the next night at the con. And he goes, oh, hi, my dear, and gives her a kiss on the cheek. Now, I don't give a shit. I don't care. He's a 50-year-old man. He's got no competition on me. But anyway, I was like, okay. So I decided that the next day I would actually try and get him, I don't know why, it was just to get even, try and get him to kiss me on the cheek, just because, I don't know. So I put a 20 in for charity. I got a hand tap. That was it. And I was like, damn it. So it was all the way at MCFC the next year. And he did it again. Like in the middle of his story hour, he came down and he said, hey, because no, it was Alkali and Kage, and they were on stage doing a charity drunken show together. And
Isn't that all their charity shows?
yeah, I know, it was the last time they were sober on stage. But, so I decided that I would set up front. We were both sponsors, and she came, and he comes right down to her, and he goes, he just gave her a kiss, and he goes, hi, and then he walks back up on stage, and Alkali goes, what did you do? And he said, I just kissed that dude's girlfriend. Well, now it's on. I'm like, all right. So I stopped him in the middle of the hall on Sunday, and it's in the lobby. I don't care. And I said, Alkali, you've kissed my girlfriend 3 times in the past year now. I'm not trying to be clingy, but when am I gonna get mine? And he just, mwah, mwah, there. And then everybody's standing there, and someone goes, you got a kiss from Kage. I'm just like, So last night, I don't know if any of you attended the alcohol appreciation panel, but Uncle Kage had enough, and so he thought that he would drunkenly walk around with Alkali's hat and sit on people's laps and beg them for money. This worked out great because the doors were shut, and I seen a few cameras go up. I don't think he cared at that point, but I'm pretty sure that if you put that up on YouTube or threaten to, I'm pretty sure that's a good way to get a badge into Anthrocon, if you don't do it. But anyway, I put a 20 in because it was all I had left for charity, so I gave it, and he leans down to me, and I'm thinking, what's he gonna do? You know, everybody, the room stopped. Dragor stopped talking, and he goes, Kage, what are you doing? And he goes, I just want to give that boy a kiss. And I gotta say, like I was saying about the furry fandom, it's, you know, probably one of the most amazing places where people can be themselves. This is the only fandom and probably the only place in the world that I would actually allow that. If a 50-year-old drunken guy came up to me and started, you know, and was like, give me money and I'll give you a kiss, I'd be like, you need to go away. Go away. But here it's like, no, it's just him, okay. It's okay. And I don't understand that logic. I really don't. But it's actually just very amusing. And it is 4:11 and someone needs to leave me alone. I don't know who that is. But it's a little after 10 after. And if people don't leave me alone. And so I actually think that sadly, since my show starts at 4:30, and I know for a fact, I've got messages, there is no sound equipment, there is no microphones, I may have to go do some blind hunting, which is always fun. It's like being in a corn maze. It's very fun. So I may have to go and do that here in a few minutes, unless I want my show to run an hour late. But I know that this panel was impromptu, and believe me, it was just as unexpected for you guys as it was for me. I didn't know what the hell was going on. This was tossed at me at the last minute, and they said, you can make it happen, do it, we'll put you in a small room so you're not on main event, so at least I won't kill you, because I wouldn't want to be up there nowhere near yet, at least not unless I practiced for a year. So, guys, I hope that you had a little laugh here. I hope that you got to learn a little something about me, and it was a lot of fun getting to do this, and I promise if you come back at a different con like For Reality, MFF, or Motor City, or this next year, it will be better and it will be rehearsed because I will know about it. So, thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it.